to take it out and it was heavy. And she was in there. And she wasn't breathing or anything.
What did she look like?
She looked pale. I thought that I killed her.
Huh?
I thought that she was dead. And I panicked.
So what happened?
I tried to wake her up and she wouldn't wake up.
On March 27, 2009, in Tracy, California, 8-year-old Sandra Cantu just disappeared. She was last seen that afternoon, skipping down a street in her trailer park. Usually, Sandra would be at home helping her mom, Maria, get dinner ready around that time. But that evening, she never made it back. Her mom started to worry when Sandra didn't show up to help her with dinner. Something was off. As time passed and there was still no sign of her, panic set in. By 7:53 p.m., Maria couldn't take it anymore. She called the police, desperate for any help to find her daughter. But here's the heartbreaking part. By the time Maria made that call, Sandra was already gone. It turned out that something or someone near their home caught Sandra's attention. A moment captured on a neighborhood video. It was the last time anyone saw Sandra alive. She just vanished after that.
The search is on for a missing 8-year-old Tracy girl and continues this morning.
Investigators say Sandra Cantu walked away from her home at the Orchard Estates mobile home park in Tracy. KCRA3 Sherikina Shams live in Tracy where the search continues right now.
Well, good morning. Behind me is the Orchard Estates mobile home park. You can see Tracy police are stationed out here, and we've watched this morning as they've stopped and questioned people driving out of the mobile home park to get their day started today. Now, this is part of the police investigation unfolding in front of us. There's also what the volunteers are doing, and there's been an emotional search for the little girl over the weekend.
And I wish we didn't have to be here. And I wish she was at home with her family. And I hope if somebody has her, they bring her home. She needs to be home with her family and her friends and all these people that care. Because we all care. That's why we're all here.
The truth came out later, and it was shocking. Sandra hadn't just wandered off. She was taken by someone she trusted the most. And no one can imagine that a teacher, especially a lady teacher, can do that to an 8-year-old child. Sandra Cantu was a bright, lively little girl born on March 8, 2001 in the town of Tracy in San Joaquin County. Her life took a new turn when she moved to Orchard Estates mobile home park with her mother, grandparents, and 3 older siblings, Miranda, Simone, and Thomas. Despite the years of separation between her parents, Maria and Daniel, Sandra and her siblings maintained a strong and loving bond with their father through regular phone chats. Now, Sandra was the kind of kid who just lit up a room. She had a way of making friends everywhere she went. Her energy was endless, and she wasn't shy about striking up conversations, even with adults. Her smile and bubbly personality made her a favorite among the other kids and even the grown-ups around. She was enrolled in the 2nd grade at Melville S. Jacobson Elementary School. And like any other day, March 27, 2009 began with a normal start. Sandra got back from school around 2 p.m. and, after a while, decided to go out and play with her friends. It was a common scene, kids from the neighborhood gathering outside, diving into games and adventures. That afternoon, Sandra changed into her favorite Hello Kitty top and black leggings, gave her mom a big hug, and dashed outside to join her friends. As the sun began to set and dinner time rolled around at 7 p.m., Maria noticed Sandra hadn't come back home. That was unusual. Sandra was always back home in time for dinner, especially since she loved helping her mom in the kitchen. Maria's heart started to race with worry. She tried calling some of Sandra's friends to see if she was with them, but with no luck. With each call, her anxiety grew, so she got into her car and started driving around the neighborhood, asking anyone and everyone if they had seen Sandra. Shockingly, no one had seen her for hours. The streets were getting darker, and the friendly chatter of the neighborhood kids had died down. The silence was unnerving. With a sinking heart and trembling hands, Maria dialed 911 at 7:53 p.m., pleading for help to find her missing daughter.
Well, I have a missing daughter. Okay, how old is she? She's 8. When's the last time you saw her? About 3. She told me she was going over to this one girl to play, and she hasn't been home. And I went looking all over.
This moment marked the beginning of a heart-stopping search throughout Tracy. Neighbors joined, and the police swept through the area. But as the hours turned into night, the hope of finding Sandra safe and sound began to dim. Little did they know, the mystery of Sandra's disappearance would soon unravel into a tragic and unsettling story that would haunt the community for years to come. So after that initial wave of fear and uncertainty hit, the Tracy Police Department didn't waste any time. They arrived at the mobile home park almost immediately after Maria reported Sandra missing. The officers quickly got to work, knocking on doors and talking to everyone in the neighborhood. They showed Sandra's picture around, hoping someone might have seen something unusual or could point them in the right direction. Despite their thorough efforts, that day ended with no sign of Sandra. The very next day, March 28th, the search efforts ramped up significantly. The local police called in the FBI for help, and together they launched a massive search operation. They brought in cadaver dogs, helicopters, and rallied a large group of volunteers, all dedicated to finding the little girl. Detectives circulated Sandra's photos far and wide, hoping for any leads that might help. The Tracy community came together like never before during this harrowing time. Over 230 professional search and rescue personnel from 16 different agencies joined forces with dozens of local volunteers. Even the U.S. Coast Guard stepped in, deploying a C-130 military plane equipped with cutting-edge cameras to scour the area from above. News channels picked up the story, and initially, authorities offered a $2,000 reward for any information. But as Sandra's case gained media traction, the reward quickly escalated to $30,000. Sandra, a Hispanic girl standing 4 feet tall and weighing 45 pounds with brown hair and brown eyes, had captured the hearts of many.
It's been a week since 8-year-old Sandra Cantu left home to play in California and never returned. Authorities in Tracy are tracking down hundreds of leads this morning and raising the reward for information on the girl.
We just want to make sure that people who are out there who really want to help and help with a reward, that their money's going where it's supposed to go.
Yet, despite everyone's best efforts, no traces of Sandra were found. The investigation then took a turn when detectives reviewed surveillance footage from a camera installed by Sandra's grandfather for security. The video showed Sandra leaving the house cheerfully and heading towards the park to play. When she returned around 4 p.m., she seemed happy, skipping towards her home. But instead of going inside, the footage captured her making an unexpected turn down the street, leading to one of the exits. This unusual behavior worried the police. Sandra was known to follow safety rules strictly, especially about not leaving with anyone unless it was family. The investigators initially suspected Sandra's father, Daniel. The scrutiny came because he hadn't seen her in a while, and there were known financial disputes between him and Maria related to custody issues. However, Maria was adamant, telling detectives firmly that despite their past marital problems, Daniel loved Sandra. She insisted that he could never be involved in her disappearance. To clear the air, the media eventually interviewed Daniel, focusing on his anguish and concern for his missing daughter.
And I think the reason why it's important for us to do this interview is because if the attention is taken off of you, then the attention can be put on the real person, if there is a person that abducted Sandra, or the search, instead of these things that are kind of thwarting people.
It's like I told the detective, do everything you need to do your job to the best of your ability. If when a person loves what they do, they're not working. Pretty wise man told me that. So, do your job, do the best thing you can do. Thank you for all your prayers. Thank you for the time off work. I needed it. Thank you for understanding. I'm just hoping that my daughter gets home soon.
So after that, as the search for the person responsible continued, the community really came together. They held a vigil, and Maria found some comfort in being surrounded by her family, investigators, and neighbors right there at her home, trying to support her through these impossible times. Then, at about 8:30 p.m., something really unexpected happened. Melissa, a neighbor living a few miles away, rushed over in shock. She'd found a handwritten note near a mailbox, and it was so disturbing that she barely had time to catch her breath before she showed it to the police. The note was chilling. It read, "Cantu locked in stolen suitcase thrown in water on Batchett Road and Whitehall Road. Witness." Not only was the message terrifying, but the note itself looked really odd. It was full of spelling mistakes, almost like someone was trying to disguise their handwriting or rush it.
And what's so interesting about this note is it almost looks like there are deliberate misspellings. I mean, a very simple word "on" is misspelled, and an FBI expert looked at it and gave an opinion that it looked like someone was camouflaging the writing, hiding their true writing.
Everyone was puzzled. Was the note real or just a play to throw the investigation off track? It left more questions than answers. The police needed to follow this lead, so they brought Melissa in to give a full statement. In her FBI interview, Melissa discussed her dual roles as a neighbor and a Sunday school teacher at the local church.
Her family was church-going people. Her grandfather was the pastor at the church around the corner.
Today we're going to study this Bible verse.
And she was a school teacher there. So as a family, we felt safe having her there.
As Melissa recounted the events to the FBI agents, she admitted that when she found the note, she hadn't really looked around to see if anyone else was near or noticed anyone else unusual that might have raised suspicions. As days turned into weeks, the tension in the community only grew. Authorities continued their search, but there was still no trace of Sandra. Then, after 10 long and agonizing days, Sandra's case took a shocking turn that nobody expected. The twist would reveal more about the mysterious circumstances of her disappearance and shake the community to its core. On April 6th, Jose Luis Franco, a farm worker, was draining an irrigation pond. He spotted a black suitcase partially buried in the mud. Someone had wrapped an additional cord around the locked suitcase to ensure its closure. The weight of the suitcase filled everyone with a terrible sense of dread.
On April 6th, Jose Luis Franco saw a suitcase floating in a dairy pond, and his reaction was almost automatic.
I called the police immediately because I was very aware of the missing girl. I see it every day on the news, and I have kids of my own, so it's on my mind. So when I came across and saw the suitcase, it looked very suspicious.
When they pulled the suitcase out, the grim hit really hard. Inside, curled up in a fetal position, was Sandra's lifeless body. She was still dressed in her black leggings and her beloved Hello Kitty shirt. The sight was harrowing. Sandra had numerous cuts and wounds, and a torn piece of cloth soaked with blood and fashioned into a noose tied around her neck. This terrifying scene was a brutal reminder of the suffering she endured, sending shock and sorrow through everyone touched by this tragedy.
It's devastating. You know, we lived up to this moment that she's still alive. We gotta find her. She's still alive. We can find her. We can find her. And then at this point, we can't. The only thing we can do to help her now is by finding out who did this.
Sandra's body was quickly sent for an autopsy to understand more about her final hours. The autopsy results only deepened the horror. Despite the absence of biological fluids, the autopsy revealed that Sandra had suffered a severe assault with an unknown object. Her cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. Furthermore, the discovery of a high dose of alprazolam in her body suggests a drugged state. The official cause of death was recorded as homicidal asphyxiation, confirming the worst fears. Sandra was murdered just hours after she was last seen on surveillance footage.
The doctor determined that she had been sexually assaulted, and at first was kind of confused because of the angle that had been used for the sexual assault, and kind of determined that it had been with a foreign object.
The investigation then shifted into high gear to find the monster responsible for such a heinous act. Given the disturbing details of the assault, police quickly put together a profile of the potential suspect. They were looking for a white male, aged between 25 and 40, likely with a history of sexual assault or possession of child abuse material. This person was probably not a stranger to Sandra, but someone she could have trusted, possibly even a park neighbor.
From this point forward, investigators will be looking at all of the evidence that was collected today and the evidence that and information that we have collected prior in the prior days regarding this investigation. We will be determining the person or persons responsible for this reprehensible act, and we will bring them to justice.
The search intensified, checking and verifying the alibis of all registered sex offenders in the area, but yielding no conclusive results. The investigation took another twist when neighbors near the irrigation pond were questioned. One resident, living close to the pond, recalled a strange sighting that didn't initially seem important. He had seen a dark purple, two-toned SUV parked near the swampy area the day Sandra disappeared. Locals typically avoid this area, making the SUV's presence all the more suspicious. Curious and concerned, the neighbor approached the SUV to see if he could spot the driver. To his surprise, the vehicle was empty. Moments later, a woman emerged from the trees, claiming she had stopped to use the bathroom. She quickly returned to the SUV and drove off at a high speed. This encounter left the neighbor puzzled and uneasy about the strange occurrence in that quiet, isolated spot. His description of the woman matched someone the community knew well, Melissa Huckabee.
Basically, they saw her coming up from the pond, they engaged her in conversation, and were able to provide the exact time this was based on where they had eaten that night for dinner. It described her to a T. It described her vehicle to a T.
So after that eerie encounter near the pond, the investigation took a sharp turn towards Melissa Huckabee. The detectives checked the CCTV footage from Sandra's house and saw Melissa getting into her SUV, parked right across the street from her own house around 3:30 p.m. She drove towards her house, which was just to the left of where Sandra lived. After that, Melissa was seen heading to her grandparents' church before she was spotted by the resident near the pond around 5:30 p.m. This timeline was crucial because it placed Melissa in the area right around the time Sandra disappeared. The police now strongly suspected Melissa of being involved in Sandra's disappearance and wanted to question her further. However, when they went to speak with her, they found out she had attempted suicide by eating razor blades and was hospitalized, which delayed their ability to question her further. Once they could, Melissa insisted she had nothing to do with the events, claiming she was at church decorating her classroom when Sandra was last seen. Remember, she was the one who brought the mysterious note to the police in the first place. Interestingly, Melissa had called the police earlier to report a stolen suitcase from her driveway. She even texted Maria, suggesting that her own theft that day might be relevant to the investigation. The black Eddie Bauer suitcase that held Sandra matched the description of the one Melissa reported being stolen. As the pieces began to fit together, police decided to search Melissa's home and the church. Inside Melissa's trailer, they found a notebook. The handwriting in that notebook matched the handwriting on the note Melissa claimed to have found. In her car, a post-it note contained the words Batchett Road, Whitehall Road, and water, cryptic clues that seemed to tie back to the case. Additionally, alprazolam found in Sandra's body was discovered in Melissa's purse. The search at Clover Road Baptist Church revealed even more damning evidence. Investigators found a rolling pin stained with blood that matched Sandra's DNA.
It had a red smudge on it. So they collected it with gloves, of course, put it in a bag, and tried to find fingerprints on it and collected that smudge.
Furthermore, they noticed that one of the church's window blinds was missing a draw cord. The cord used to secure the suitcase in which Sandra's body was found matched the cord from the church blinds. This series of discoveries intensified suspicions against Melissa, painting a grim picture of the events leading to Sandra's tragic end. The investigation was drawing closer to a disturbing conclusion, as each new piece of evidence seemed to connect Melissa to this terrible crime.
Nothing we have done and nothing we can say will ever return Sandra to her family and to the community. But last night, we arrested Melissa Huckabee, a 28-year-old Sunday school teacher who lives at the Orchard Estates mobile home park. And she has been booked into San Joaquin County Jail on suspicion of kidnapping and murder of Sandra Cantu. Information developed over the course of the last few days and during an interview that Melissa drove herself to the police department to participate in led us to develop probable cause to take her into custody at approximately 11:15 last evening. There's still a lot of work left to be done over the next several weeks to ensure that Ms. Huckabee pays for what she's done. There are no other suspects in this case. We do not anticipate any other arrests in this case. I couldn't begin to even theorize what her motive is. I'd like to thank the city of Tracy, the community, and everyone assembled here for the support and the assistance that you've provided us over the last 15 days. Our community will start to heal at some point. Today is going to be a very difficult day for everyone to be able to digest that.
So after all those unsettling discoveries, on April 10th, 2009, Melissa Huckabee found herself heading to the police department. She was taken into custody. During the interrogation, the investigators laid out all the evidence they had gathered. They really pressed her for answers. At first, Melissa denied everything, but as the questions kept coming, her story began to change. She shockingly claimed that Sandra's death was an accident.
It was an accident.
I told you it was an accident. I know it was. Accidents happen.
Kill her.
According to Melissa, she was at the church when she came outside, discovered a heavy suitcase, and found Sandra inside, not breathing and looking pale. Melissa then narrated a bizarre story. She claimed she had been playing a game of hide and seek with Sandra and her own daughter. She suggested to Sandra that she hide in the suitcase and then jump out to surprise her sister. Melissa acknowledged that she had packed Sandra into the suitcase, but she became preoccupied and forgot about her. When she finally remembered and opened the suitcase at the church, she found Sandra lifeless. Panicked, she tried CPR and used a wet towel to cool Sandra's forehead, but it was too late. Overwhelmed by the situation, Melissa said she didn't know what to do and eventually decided to dispose of Sandra's body in a nearby pond. However, the police were skeptical of her story, suspecting that she was not telling the whole truth. As the interrogation progressed, police dug deeper into Melissa's personal life and uncovered a troubled past filled with criminal activities, depression, and other mental health issues. Her legal troubles were well documented. Court records revealed that on January 9th, she had pleaded no contest to felony second-degree commercial burglary and misdemeanor property theft charges. A criminal complaint detailed her history further, including a 2006 property theft conviction that resulted in jail time in Los Angeles County. In November 2008, she was accused of attempting to steal from a store and was on probation in San Joaquin County, with a court date looming. Additionally, Melissa filed for bankruptcy in 2003, citing overwhelming credit card debt and medical expenses. The more they learned, the more the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Melissa's troubled past, combined with the evidence gathered, painted a disturbing picture of her capabilities and the potential motives behind her actions. The police, now armed with this information, were determined to piece together what really happened to Sandra and ensure justice was served. So after that, the courtroom was the stage for the next chapter of this harrowing story. On April 14th, the trial of Melissa Huckabee began, and it was there that she showed the most emotional response yet. Upon hearing the details of her criminal actions, Melissa Huckabee closed her eyes and appeared to struggle with holding back tears.
In the third special circumstance, it is further alleged that the murder of Sandra Cantu was committed by Melissa Huckabee while said defendant was engaged in the commission, attempted commission, or immediate flight after the commission or attempted commission of the crime of rape by instrument in violation of Penal Code Section 289 within the meaning of Penal Code Section 190.2A17K. It is also put on notice that the evidence presented at the preliminary hearing will also be used for any violation of probation and a request for discovery.
During the trial, prosecutor Thomas Testa argued vigorously. He said Melissa had carefully planned Sandra's death. He showed surveillance footage that suggested Sandra had intended to visit Melissa's house on the day she disappeared. The prosecutor painted a grim picture. He claimed Melissa took Sandra to the church supposedly to help with decorations, but there, she gave Sandra juice spiked with a powerful sedative. According to the prosecutor, after the sedative took effect and Sandra passed out, Melissa attacked her and then suffocated her to death. Initially, Thomas Testa sought the death penalty against Melissa because she had not yet admitted guilt to these horrendous acts.
And I think that's a testament to the strength of the case and to the credit of the detectives and the FBI, is that she probably thought there was no way out. She probably would have been given the death penalty had the case gone to trial.
However, a pivotal moment came during one of the trial proceedings. Melissa made the shocking decision to plead guilty, accepting full responsibility for her actions. This was a significant turn in the courtroom. Melissa's decision to plead guilty was a profound moment in the case. Her admission brought some measure of closure to the Cantu family, sparing them from enduring a lengthy and painful trial. This moment significantly altered the course of the trial and ultimately led to Sandra's case being resolved. Melissa's guilty plea simplified the legal proceedings and provided the Cantu family with some comfort after the tragic loss they had endured. On June 14, 2010, a judge sentenced Melissa Huckabee to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her sentencing was the culmination of a long and emotional journey for everyone involved, marking the end of a case that had gripped the community with fear and sorrow.
This time, Ms. Huckabee is statutorily ineligible for probation pursuant to Penal Code Section 190.2A. There can be no other commitment other than state prison, so probation is denied as a matter of law. For a violation of Penal Code Section 187, murder in the first degree of Sandra Cantu, as Ms. Huckabee pled guilty to count 1 of the indictment, you are hereby sentenced to imprisonment in the state prison for a term of 25 years to life. You have admitted the special circumstance that the murder was committed during the course of a kidnapping pursuant to Section 190A-17B of the Penal Code. Therefore, this converts the 25 to life sentence to one of imprisonment in state prison for life without the possibility of parole.
It was a sobering reminder, not only of the depths of human cruelty, but also of the resilience of those who seek justice.